I do think that the generative AI is going to plateau at some point because it's just textual reasoning mostly, right?
Yes. You have like this imposter syndrome that how can I be writing? I'm not an expert in this field. There are these big experts out there.
I feel like that the next wave after all of this is basically agents. Right now,
Yes.
when we talk about agents, we think of like, well, an assistant or a chatbot, but I think this is going to evolve into robotics.
The clients that came to you, what kind of problems were they facing? How were you helping them out using AI? People have already started using AI to create content, and then do you think it's fair that you have spent so much time and effort to write content from your own, and now somebody just comes in, writes in ChatGPT, and then is publishing every single day and getting so many subscribers? So a lot of people speak about AI, but our guest today has been writing about AI for quite some time. She has more than 10,000 followers on medium.com, and she also runs an AI consultancy business in Canada. So let's ask her, how is she doing all of this while also managing kids? Priya Dwivedi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to join you here. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So Priya, how are you doing all of this? And first of all, let's begin with, why did you choose to write about AI, and what inspired you? Were you always a data scientist? Tell us about your journey.
Yeah. Let me start with my background. So I am an engineer by background. My engineering was in mechanical engineering. I did that in India in a school called IIT Delhi. And then after I finished engineering, in mechanical engineering, I wasn't sure about my career path, but I got a job in a company in Canada that was in banking sector. The company was called Capital One, and they were actually really big into using data to make decisions. That was a completely new thing for me coming out of college, but through them I got a really good experience on how you can use data for making decisions, right? Like who should you target for offers, who is likely to default, right? You could actually look at data and mine all those patterns, and that was really good experience for me. And I was with them for good 8 9 years, and after that, right around that time in my career, machine learning was taking off. Traditionally, machine learning used to be a lot of statistical methods and stuff, but then new techniques were coming out, and people were trying to apply these to images and to text to audio. So I thought I'm gonna I'm gonna do that. I really enjoy solving problems with data, so why not upskill myself? So I left the job. I took like a decision to just spend time upskilling myself, and I learned a lot. I enjoyed the experience. Right, I also learned coding along the way because my background was in mechanical engineering. I did not learn coding that much, but I learned that through my experience. And then I started blogging, and people reached out to me through my blogs and said, "Well, can you do these projects for me?" And then I started my own consulting company. So that is just a background of how I
Wow.
started, and I've just learned tons through that. Right, like just the field has grown, and I've learned a lot through that as well.
Amazing. I mean, it reminds me of my own journey. I also started off as an engineer, and then later on I transitioned. Well, I did have some exposure to coding when I was doing my engineering, but I then transitioned full scale into AI. That sounds really interesting. So this Capital One job, when was this around? How long
This
was
was
this ago?
around, I started in 2007 and I did that till 2015 or so.
Wow. And in
Yeah.
2007 they were already data-based. Were they using AI models, or was it just
No. So I think
statistics?
that they also, I think over the time that I was there, they evolved too. So they did have a really good, robust um, database to collect data. So they were very heavy users of SQL to like log everything. And then at that time, we had limited tools. So a lot of analysis was done in Excel. So you just pull a lot of data, you're limited to 32,000 or rows that
Yes.
Excel has, and then you do analysis. Over time, we moved to doing some of this in SAS, which was an initial software for doing a little bit of programming, and some in SQL. But I don't think I did anything much in Python there. Like
Hmm.
so they were more into using traditional methods like random forest and stuff for making decision, right? Like doing more statistics rather than the machine learning that we know of as machine learning now.
Exactly. But still, I'm really surprised that they were having such a nice database to begin with. many companies, they want AI solutions, but they don't even have the
I
data
don't have.
ready for AI solutions. Yeah.
Yes.
So
No, absolutely.
that
I mean,
that's really interesting.
they were really like this stand out in that, right? That was always their mode or like competitive edge is they would loan to very risky segments of the market very selectively because
Okay.
they could understand who could pay, who could not pay by looking at the data, right? And so they were basically able to make a lot more revenue from compared to their competitors because they could use data more strategically than others could, right? So you could target better.
Yeah.
And that was always their strategic advantage. So they had a very heavy emphasis on data and analysis right through the
Wow.
company culture. Yeah.
Amazing. So
Yes.
you did two things, you did two things that are both very remarkable. One is that you went out, you started blogging, and we'll get to that first. We'll get to that second. But first, I want to know, why did you make this big decision of leaving a full-time job and becoming an entrepreneur, running your own company? Isn't that a very big decision?
I don't think I made that consciously. I just decided at some point that the banking jobs were repetitive, right? Like I had done in Capital One every department, I'd done all kinds of stuff, and I didn't want to do that anymore.
Wow.
So, and I wanted to just upskill myself. I had a very supportive husband who didn't mind me spending time upskilling. And then I started blogging as well because mostly, I wanted to keep track of what I was learning. So I thought blogging is a good way to just keep that. So I have to say, a lot of things in life just happen. The opportunities come to you, and then you decide whether you take
Yes.
them and what you make of them,
Yes.
right? So I
Yes.
did not leave a job to become an entrepreneur. It's just that like people reached out to me through my blogs and asked me to do projects, and I
Wow.
thought, well, I love that. Why not? Why don't I do that? And then when I went down that path, I'd never looked back into going back into banking.
Amazing, amazing. I was reading somewhere that people oftentimes they'll blame luck for not having success, but it's also those people who are capitalizing on their luck who are really successful. Many people get opportunities, but not everybody capitalizes on it.
And
And it
then
seems
stuff,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it seems whatever opportunities you got, you capitalized on it, and that has
I
really helped you so far.
No, I agree with you 100%. So I'm also curious, like you are also a consultant. How did you decide to, did you proactively decide, or was just like me, it just happened to you that you
So
went
for
down that
for
path?
me, no, for me, honestly, it was the opposite. I was a lazy guy, and it was my wife that kept pushing me more and more and more. And she would always tell me that, why don't you try your luck at in entrepreneurship? Why don't you try your own business? And I was living in Canada just like you, and I, immediately saw that, people who are working are not going to get very far in life because the whole system is designed to be, employees are at the bottom of the food chain, right? And
Yeah,
if you want to make a living there, if you want to have some kind of success, you'll have to move into your own business, you'll have to move into your own consulting and entrepreneurship. So that was something that I had in mind. I wasn't really full scale convinced about it, but my wife was the more motivating factor. She would always tell me that, if you're really good at this, why don't you start consulting? Why don't you make your own corporation and stuff like that? And then, like you said, things fell into place. My full-time job, the next opportunity that came was a consulting role. So I formed my own corporation in Canada, and then the consulting business started from there.
very nice, very nice. No,
Yeah.
you're right, right. I think that one of the points you said around it's hard to succeed or hard to like stand out in Canada without having your own
Yes.
business is very true. It's a very socialist kind
Yes.
of economy, right?
Yeah.
Anyways, I
Yeah.
don't want to
And also,
diverge
also
into
the
that
whole,
now.
yeah, exactly. And the whole tax system, and it's designed in such a way that it benefits people who are doing businesses. And we know everywhere, right? Like Elon Musk is showing zero salary and paying zero taxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the corporate world works like that. So
Yes.
anyone who's smart will certainly move into this direction. I
Yep.
wanted to ask you, so when you went into blogging, and it seems like you were doing blogging and upskilling at the same time, did
Yes.
you have like this imposter syndrome that how can I be writing? I'm not an expert in this field. There are these big
Uh,
experts out there. Did you have any
no,
such kind of
no,
feelings?
not really. So I think that at the time that I started writing about this, well, even throughout, like the most people didn't know about this stuff. They really wanted someone to write about it, and I've always like my goal with blogging has been to share experiments. I know a lot of people just blog about, hey, this came out,
Yes.
and they'll just
Theory.
like, write about, let me talk about this paper. I'm very practitioner. I'm a practitioner. I'm experimentalist. So I always spend like, I spent a lot of time on my blogs in that I would prepare for them. I would run experiments. I would see what worked, what didn't work. And then I
Wow.
would blog with code and say, hey, here's something I built. And this is how I built it, right? So people could actually benefit from it, right? They could take the code and they could use that to build something else. So that has always been my goal. I don't want to blog by just saying something, oh, this new model came out. I just want to try build new things and share that and give people practical tools how they can use the same thing to build their own things. That's always been
Yeah.
the reason I blog.
I think you know what the somehow that mechanical engineer in you has affected the way you have worked.
Maybe you're
And
right. Maybe you're right.
yeah,
I want to build
same apply.
practical things, yeah, with AI.
Yeah, same applies to me. When I was doing engineering, there was a joke that there was a king and he was punishing people, and in the olden days they used to have this guillotine that the blade comes
Yeah.
down and chops someone head. So he was punishing people like that, and then one after the other, people were getting killed, and then this thing suddenly got stuck, and everybody who was coming, it gets stuck, it gets stuck, it gets stuck, and then an engineer comes, and then it gets stuck, and he says, I see the problem. I see the problem. The pulley is not connected properly and this and that, and you need to oil it and stuff like that. So when they fixed it, he was the next one to be killed.
Oh
So as
man.
engineers, and as engineers, we are always trying to find problems and trying to look for solutions. And this has helped me a lot as well. When I'm going and pitching, solutions to businesses, I don't talk as a statistician. I don't talk as a data scientist, theoretical stuff. What businesses care about is, solutions. And that's what I want to ask you next. The clients that came to you, what kind of problems were they facing? How were you helping them out using AI?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think most of the clients that came to me were like startups who were starting to just kind of use technology, right? And the technology has changed over time. At the beginning, it was like, well, let's just do object detection and computer vision because that was new, right? There was
Yes,
summarization in the text word, which
NLP.
some models like now it seems so trivial to do these things, but these were quite hard even 3 years ago, right?
Yes,
Doing good
yes,
summaries was hard. So mostly I worked with startups because they wanted to do cutting edge stuff. Even now, like when I do generative AI stuff, it's mostly I find startups are on the lead edge of technology, right? They want to use the latest stuff. And that's why they look for people who know that. And yeah, so from what they care about, I think your perspective is very correct, right? They care about solving their problem. They want someone who has knowledge of tools, has experience, has judgment, because oftentimes they're just like, well, this is all I have. I have some data, I don't have some data, I have nothing, I have this, but here's what I want to go to. And you guide me through the path or tell me honestly, this is how far we can get. And so, yeah, so those were primarily my clients.
yeah. That's exactly my point. That companies, they want solutions rather than how you're solving it. They just want their problems to be solved.
Yeah.
Now, when you speak about generative AI, do you think that generative AI has now taken over the world and nobody really cares about machine learning and traditional AI anymore?
So, unfortunately, that has been my experience that this technology has become overhyped, right? This is the tool. This is, I mean, the two opinions here. One is that it is actually really effective, right? Like there were a lot of problems that could be solved only till a certain degree of accuracy before even let's talk about summarization, right? Now those problems do get solved much better. So the tool is quite effective, right? So I think most of the people who are doing anything with text now are using generative AI models, and rightly so. It's cheaper. You don't have to spend as much time in building the solution when an API call is like kind of easier to do, right? So
Yes.
that's good. But I also found that it do feel it's a bit overhyped, right? There's value in using other tools, other techniques, and those um, are just don't get the same importance, and people are not doing research on how to use like deep learning models or any of those as much as they're doing research on generative AI. And even on the computer vision side, I've seen that that word also got appended with generative AI. Now they're models with multimodal capabilities and stuff. And so I did feel like there was a seismic shift in the whole
Yes.
machine learning era,
Yes.
with after chat gpt came through, both in terms of just the amount of like energy and dollars and the consideration that went into all of this, a lot of research, a lot of companies wanting to do it, and the focus on all the old techniques shifted. Was
Yes.
that your
Exactly.
experience too?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember I was working in Honda, and we were doing traditional ML, deep learning and those kind of models. And then this Chat GPT got launched. And overnight, we were told that we have to shift our focus on generative AI. And then we immediately found three use cases about generative AI. One was two were text generation, and one was image generation. And the
Right.
funny thing is that, when we were giving these examples of generative AI to our employees, because these were all corporate solutions, not for the customer but for within the organization. We
Yep.
found that several departments were already using generative AI. They were using Chat GPTs, they were using DALIs and Mid Journey and these kind of
Right.
tools already. So we were actually quite late because the organization was already using it. So that's how
That's
fast this
amazing.
generative AI, yeah. And I think there was this stat, right? The fastest to a million user was before an iPhone, and now it's
Yeah,
a Chat
with
GPT.
the chat
Just within
gpt,
a few
yes.
days, yeah, it reached a million users. And the
Yep.
other thing is, many companies, like I said before, were facing problems because they didn't have good data. But when generative AI comes in, all this issue is solved because you don't need data. It's already pre-trained on, for, practically the entire internet. It already
Yeah.
knows so much information.
Yep.
Okay, you might need to fine tune it, and then there are solutions like RAG and fine tuning for that. The other thing is, generative AI it's definitely going to be the future. But I don't know if you've seen Gartner, which makes reports about predicting the future and stuff. So Gartner made a curve about AI technologies, and the curve, it goes like this, and on the top is the generative AI hype, and then that subsides, and then comes up, and then it's computer vision again. So as per their prediction, computer vision, and I'm sure it's not going to be the same computer vision. It's going to be a much more enhanced version,
Yeah.
Uh, but computer vision is going to be substantial, and it's going to come back again.
Yeah.
So what are your
I'm
thoughts
not
on that?
surprised
Maybe,
about that.
yeah,
Um, yeah, so I feel like that the next wave after all of this is basically agents. Right now,
yes,
when we talk about agents, we think of like, well, an assistant or a chatbot, but I think this is going to evolve into robotics soon enough,
yes,
right? Like that is going to be the next wave. So
yes,
if you think of the capabilities that we do have reasoning and we have text and all of those capabilities, but we the for robotics you need two other things, right? You need
yes,
the computer vision, right, to be able to correlate things more effectively, right, on where something is. And secondly, you need that mechanical automation too, right? Like if I want to grab something, can I grab, can I walk without falling, right? That kind of stuff.
yes,
So
yes,
I do think that the generative AI is going to plateau at some point because it's just textual reasoning mostly, right?
yes,
Models are becoming multimodal, but it's really expensive to use them as multimodal. And I don't know if that will be the mainstream, but I do think the focus will go back to computer vision because that's how you will actually get agents who are capable of more. Because I do think that's where we're all headed to, right? When you add reasoning and text
yes,
and vision, you
yes,
end up having something that can do quite a bit more. Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And I know you must be following Andrew NG as well. He's called the godfather of AI. And he
Yeah.
speaks a lot about AI agents. And he's like, we've already developed some kind of agents where you give them a task, you go do your own stuff, come back, and the agent has done your jobs. And
Yeah.
even I remember recently when Google were giving their launch, they had integrated everything so nicely. For example, Google Chrome is integrated with Google Maps, is integrated with other, the Google Gemini. And then, for example, they give a very good example. For example, if you're moving from one state to another, right? Let's say you're going from Toronto to Vancouver, you will need to change your postal codes, you will need to change your billing addresses, your shipping addresses, so many other things.
Yeah.
And they showcase that Google Gemini, with collaboration with other Google services, can do
Right.
all of these things for you, and that's an agent,
Oh,
right? And
yeah,
yeah,
that's
and
amazing.
and they said, like, anywhere they get stuck, the agent gets stuck. For example, the agent makes a call and tells the Canada Post, change the addresses from here to there, and Canada
Yeah.
Post asks for some information that the agent doesn't have. Then the agent will come back to you and say, Priya, can you also tell me what is your
What
you
is
know
this?
uh,
Wow.
yeah, what is this? What is that? What is your, let's say,
Yeah,
SIN number or something? Yeah. So I know amazing stuff coming up. I do agree with you that generative AI is going to, fizzle out, and then we'll have this new era of AI agents. And Sam Altman also spoke about, one man $1 billion company, and that's what he meant. That there'll be just one CEO, and all the other roles will be done by AI agents, right?
yeah.
So
Hmm.
interesting times. And you spoke about
Yeah,
robots. I do agree about that as well. It's about time that we have some, robots for some, very menial jobs that we don't need to do,
yeah,
that we don't want to do.
yeah.
So, but then again, I think there is this meme going around that I don't want a robot I don't want a robot that does my job and I do the dishes. I want a robot that does the dishes and I keep my job.
I
So
agree with that. I agree with that.
another thing I want to discuss with you is uh, OpenAI was supposed to be open source, right? It was never open source. Then they closed off the model, and now it's a paid model. More and more, we are seeing companies. Andrew Ng speaks about democratization of AI, but do you see that happening? I just see the big technology companies holding on to their models very close to them.
I think it's a mixed world. I think certainly a year back there was a lot more closed source stuff, and whatever was open source was just not there. But I do think that this is changing, right? Like with Llama and Mistral, particularly those two made a big dent, right? The
Yeah.
models that Meta released under Llama. Then I think the open source community took over, and then they did a whole bunch of like stuff, right? Merged, fine tuned, did that, extended context length. So I do think that the gap between open source and closed source is narrower now than it was in the past, right? So that way the technology is catching up. um, but I don't know honestly what the future here is, right? Because the big companies
Yeah.
do have big cash, they have the talent and everything to train bigger, more capable models, right? Or models that will be more agentic or with more reasoning. I think that open source will tend to follow them just because the talent is distributed across 2 3 companies, right? And the
Yes.
amount of resources may be less. So we'll have to see, but it's good to see at least that the gap is narrower now than was like
Yes.
a year back between open source and closed source.
Yeah. Exactly. And then I asked this question to everyone who is from the AI industry. I'm going to
Yeah,
ask it to you also. Do you think that AI has? Do you think there's anything to fear from AI now or in the future?
I think that's a that's a very tough question to answer, right? Like, I think that if you look at the media, there are people on both sides of the aisle, right, which are quite vocal, right? There are a lot of people that say, well, there are a lot of people who do fear mongering, like Elon Musk, who say, well, everyone's going to die and robots are going to take over, right? And the people like Jan LeCun who are more a voice of like calmness, saying, well, nothing is going to happen. The models won't ever get there. So I don't know. I do think, I do think it's almost inevitable that the models will do more of the jobs that we are doing
Yes.
now, because we are actually contributing to that, right? By building
Yes.
applications and by researching and applying, right? That's what we're doing. We're trying to make the models more capable and build more use cases for them, which does mean that they will do more. I think that does mean that as humankind we would have to evolve to do different kinds of
Yeah.
things. And I think you had mentioned like at some point, like, well, what do you think about your kids, right? Like, I mean, for myself, I don't know how much I would have to evolve, right? Or how much things would change in the next 5 10 years. But
Yeah.
certainly for kids, it's very hard to imagine like what it would be like when they are even in college or high school, what kind of
Yes.
courses should be there, what kind of jobs
Yes.
they would do, right? Like it's really hard. Like, as you know, earlier on, like maybe 10 years ago, parents would encourage kids to be computer programmers, but now we know that the models are already becoming quite good at programming, right? 10 years down the
Yes.
road, they may even be perfect programmers. You don't need programmers, right? So you just really have to encourage your kids to be curious, right? Love learning, love upskilling, because that would be one thing they would have to do continuously. Have to learn new things, upskill yourself, and apply themselves somewhere else.
Yes.
Yes, but I do think that the technology would have impact. It would have impact on jobs. It seems almost inevitable, right? Like
It's
we with
inevitable.
the models automating, right? They are going to take jobs. So jobs would have to evolve to be different, right? I also don't see a world where humans don't do anything. I don't think most people would like that world. like it's fun to be on a vacation, but life is different when it's a continuous
Yes,
vacation, right? Like people would
absolutely.
want to be, yeah, I can't imagine myself not doing anything as someone saying me, let me give you universal basic income and you sit at home. I might be happy for a month, but then after that I'll be quite bored, right? I have to do something. So we would have to learn what that something is, that we can do, right? To exercise our mind, right? To feel fulfilled. um, but a lot of jobs that we do right now are that are menial, or like entering or this or that or preparing reports, those are likely to be automated to a good extent. What is your opinion on this? Do you believe, like, what do you think that the future looks like here?
I am, I would say, on the fence. I'm not
Yes.
completely convinced with the right or the left. I
Yeah.
do feel that AI has AI, like Sal Khan from the Khan Academy. I think he made a very good point. He said if the good guys leave AI, then AI is sure to fall into the bad guys' hands, and that's what
Yeah.
I'm afraid of as well. For example, deep fake technology. It is
Yeah.
extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. You can look up so many cases in US where entire schools' photos have been taken and made deep fakes and ransom and all that kind of stuff.
Oh wow.
So I can't imagine what my kids could go through, with this potential. Let's imagine somebody makes a deep fake app and it's so easy to just take a snapshot and just make any kind of pictures. This could
Yeah.
be so embarrassing for kids and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I do feel that, AI has to be responsible AI. We
Yes.
cannot just run behind technology. Oh, this is doable, let's do it. No, we should just think it through, think of the ethical repercussions of
Hi.
it. If we do this, what's going to be the ethical repercussion? Is it worth doing it or not?
Yeah.
Just like, for example, self-driving car. And then, like in the movie of Will Smith, the robot decides to save Will Smith but not the kid, because he
Yeah.
sees a higher percentage of probability of living. But as a human, we want to save the kids rather than the adults. So
Yeah.
these kind of ethical questions, I guess, will have to be thought really well, especially when
Yeah.
it comes to lives being affected, right?
Yeah.
So I'm still on the fence. I do agree that AI has the potential of automating a lot of menial jobs, and even augmenting a lot of progress. For example, doctors can now look at X-rays, and AI can augment and show them
Yeah.
potential cancers and stuff like that. And then, of course, the expertise of the doctor is still there. So we using it as an augmenting tool is still good. I would not
Yes.
agree and say replace the doctor with an AI.
Yeah.
So I'm a
No, I
firm
agree with you.
believer
I
of
think
I'm a firm believer in this policy called human in the loop. You should always have a human in the loop. And
yes.
and
No, I
as things
100%
get
agree.
more sensitive, definitely put more humans in the loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I
no, the
think
upside
even
here
like
is also immense, right? In some fields like medical or
yes,
education that have
yes,
been
exactly.
not have been like advanced in quite some time, the potential for experiences are just enormous, right? Like for us to know what's wrong with our body before we actually feel the symptoms, it's going to be
Yes.
huge, right? Like with that going to upend how medicine has traditionally been. Yep.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And then I had another guest, and he was thinking, he was convinced that AI is going to become self-conscious and sentient, and the way we have programmed it and the way it's learning. And I do believe there were a few instances where two AI agents were talking to each other and also rewriting their code and stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that they conscious, but in they might outsmart us in certain ways. That's a possibility. We have to admit it.
Yep.
So and then like in the movies, they show that an AI decides that okay, the best course of action for human survival is to get rid of humans because
Yeah. Yeah. I
humans are the
know.
ones killing humans,
I
and
know.
that's true in a way. So,
Yes.
anyways, these are, I would. There was this recently a government summit here in Dubai, and this was the talk of the town. All the leaders were talking about AI and stuff like that, and that's because it is going to impact on such large scale that they need to decide on the course of actions for this.
Yeah.
Let me
No,
come.
I'm
Let me
glad
come
that they're
back to
doing that.
yeah. Let me come back to your content creation. Do you think? people have already started using AI to create content, and then do you think it's fair that you have spent so much time and effort to write content from your own, and now somebody just comes in, writes in Chat GPT, and then is publishing every single day and getting so many subscribers? What is your take on that?
I think that people are absolutely using AI to write content. I do think that that content doesn't tends to be a little bit fluffy, and doesn't tend to
No
like
depth in it.
yeah, it doesn't tend to like for example, like my style of writing is to solve problems, right, or show examples. And I don't think that an AI could write that well still, right, like just show an example and show how to solve it. But yeah, I mean, and even with content writing, I think that the ideal form of content writing is with AI assisted, right? Instead of writing everything
Mm,
myself, when I may not have the best English, I would rather have the model paraphrase it, right? But all the ideas and the structure and the code should come from me, right? But
yes.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people are just writing things through AI and publishing and getting subscribers. But I think that's a very short term play. You have to have meaningful content to
Yes.
keep audience around in the long run. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So have you started using AI as an assistance for content creation?
I've been using AI as an assistant for a lot of stuff, right? I do think that, and this is my genuine philosophy, right? Like, this is a really capable technology that has the potential to make all of us a lot more effective at whatever we do, right? So, not using it is a waste of is waste of like
Resources.
resources. So I highly encourage my team to use these technology all the time for coding, for all of that, right? It's best to write the starter code through something like this and then edit it, right? The ideas and the design and everything is yours, but rather than going to Stack Overflow to search for small things, why not get starter code from here and try that, right? And same for content writing, right? I prefer to like write my things, but I may not be spending 100% time editing everything manually myself. So I would be just giving it to a software, to any of these open source these models, to say, hey, why don't you keep it as it is and just paraphrase it so it flows better, and then I reread it and publish it. So that saves me some hours of like having to edit and rewrite things. So, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. The technology is there,
Yeah.
you should actually use it to make your life easier.
Yeah, and we were talking about kids, so I just remembered something. I gave a speech once in a university here in Dubai, and at the end there was so many question answers, right? And one of them was, is AI going to make us dumber? And at that moment the answer came to me that when the calculators came, I'm sure many people must have said that the calculators are going to make us dumber because we were doing mental math and now we can use a tool for that.
Yeah.
So the interesting point I wanted to make out was that the dean who was sitting there, he said that using any kind of tool to help you is it's good, but if you are losing that basic sense of for example, logic, if you have lost the idea that what is 1 centimeter versus 1 kilometer, if somebody doesn't understand the basics, right, they don't have a simple sense of logic, then they should not be given these tools. They should be first
Yeah.
made to develop this basic kind of logic.
Logic, yes.
Yeah, and then given the tools, right? It's like you know how to drive a small a simple car, and now you can use tools and drive faster cars. If somebody doesn't know how to drive at all, then these tools might end up causing more harm.
Yeah.
And then
No,
of course
that's
there
a
are
fair
so
point.
many cases where there was a case where a lawyer used Chat GPT to write a case, and then he went and presented it into the court, and he said, and so year the judgment was passed like this and this, and and then the judge is like, no, this never happened. Where did you get that from?
Yeah.
So it was the model hallucinating and stuff.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you about generative AI. We spoke about the advantages, and I gave you one disadvantage, the hallucination one. What other disadvantages do you think are there that we should, or not disadvantages, but something that we should be concerned and conscious about? When we're using generative AI.
So I think of generative AI as this. I actually heard this somewhere in some video a long time back. Think of this as a friend who always has an opinion and will always speak, right? Like you ask them something, whether they know about it or not, they'll just speak their mind, right? So you have to basically be careful about what opinions you take from that, and what advice you take from that friend and what you don't. So that's how I think about this technology. Is it's always available whatever you ask it, it tends to give you some answer. um, and you have to basically decide if that advice is on point for you or not. It may be, the hallucination is a big problem, right? It could just be plainly wrong. But even if it is not, right, like whether that solves your problem or not is something you have to figure out, right? Let's say I asked it to write code and it gave me code, but was that the best way to like solve the problem? Probably not. It just did what I asked it to do, right? Like it just so I think that a lot of with generative AI, basically you have to figure out how to apply it, right? Where to apply it, and then have a lot of controls in checks in place to make sure that the quality of things is good. Also, technology here tends to have more error rate, right? It's less predictable, right? It may not give you in the format you want, and your code in production would break, right? So you have to have a lot of checks as well to make sure you get the quality or the format that you want the output in.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of a family member I have, and
Yeah.
she would always have an opinion, like you said. And I would always tell her that, even if you're wrong, the way you say it is full of confidence.
Yes. That's what generative AI is. A
Yeah,
confident
that's what
family
generative AI
always gives
does.
you opinion.
Yes, it's wrong. And a prime example is Gemini. Recently, they integrated it into Google search and they called it AI. What was it called? I forgot the name. Anyways, AI experience or something like that. So basically, when you search in a Google search now, it gives you a text as the answer. And people started using, how many rocks should I eat per day? And it's giving you the answer as per latest research. You should eat one rock per day. There's lots of benefits. So, full of
Amazing.
confidence and supporting research papers and documents. And of course, the problem people don't understand is that it's trained on data that's publicly available. So if
Yeah.
there's fake information, that also goes into the model.
Yeah.
So it's really hard for generative AI to make the distinction between what is fact and what is fake. It's like
Yeah.
a naive friend who believes everything you tell it. So
Yeah.
that's
So
that's
you know what?
that's the problem.
This brings back a point that you had mentioned before. There was someone said that AI is becoming sentient and all of that, right? I read listened to a talk recently that was very very like eye opening. I think that the whole premise of that is that all that these models are really doing is searching through data and finding the most probabilistic answer, which we know of theoretically is correct. We just always get amazed because we don't know all the data that's out there, right? And how many times different things are repeated. So
Yes.
if you think of it from that perspective, that really all they we what we lack is we just don't know how much information is out there because our brain is so small, right? We can only get absorb a
Yes.
small portion, but these models can absorb a lot, and when they actually are able to answer, it seems magical to us, and we think that these guys they have feelings or they're going to be real. So I don't know what the line is. I mean, I think this is up for debate too, but I feel more and more that all that they're doing is probabilistically generating inference, and it seems magical because we just don't know the extent of data that's out there.
So Priya, I want to ask another aspect, slightly away from the data science and the AI and the agents going rogue. How are you managing all of these different hats, right? You're blogging consistently, you're running an AI consultancy, and you're also taking care of your household. How are you managing all of these things?
That's a great question, Adnan. I think it's definitely challenging. I think most parents can attest to that, right? It's really hard to manage kids and then
Especially in
work
Canada
and
where
then
you can't
house.
get help.
You can't also get help. I think
Yeah.
that the key is to do things that you're passionate about, because then it doesn't feel like work, right? That's one thing that helps. B is I tend to do jobs. I look for things that are flexible in terms of time, right? With kids, you definitely need flexibility, right? There are certain time that their school ends, they got to be picked up, right? So I think that was one of the reasons I started doing this self consulting and entrepreneurship, is it gives me flexibility on how I want to work. And then I think like just the other thing that helps is just being judicious about time, right? Being efficient, right? Like using tools that you can, being well managed or being well prepared, those help. But I don't think there is any magic pill. I think most parents that
Okay.
they go through this phase of life with kids and work and all of that do struggle, and everyone finds their balance in different ways.
Amazing. Was there ever a time where you thought like, okay, this is too much to manage. I must drop one of these things?
I have felt that all the time. There's always too much to manage, whether it's like the sum total of everything on my plate is always too much to
Yes.
manage. But um, I think that's the way it is.
My wife and kids are in Canada temporarily, and I'm here in Dubai. So one of my friends was coming from Canada to Dubai, and she asked my wife, "Do you want to send anything to your husband?" And she was like, "Yeah, I want to send three kids."
I can feel I can feel that.
Yes.
Yes.
So I understand, just, managing a family itself is a full-time job. And then on top of that, you found time. And this is a big encouragement that if you love what you do, then it's not really work, it's enjoyment.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So finally, Priya, do you have any advice for budding data scientists or, stay-at-home moms like you who want to, you know, try their hand at entrepreneurship and consulting? Do you have any advice for them?
Yes, I think I would encourage people to first find what they like, right? Like, I think it's painful to do something just because everyone else is doing and it's the hype, right? You have to figure out what you want to do, right? It could be data science, right? It could be subset of data science. Maybe you enjoy computer vision way more than text processing, or you enjoy audio processing. Whatever it is, I think you have to find what you like, and then you have to try and upskill yourself in that, right? And there's plenty of resources online. I think uh, that landscape has changed much more than 10 years ago, right? There's a lot of free courses, there's a lot of stuff people post on YouTube, there are blogs and stuff. So use those resources to upskill yourself. And then I think lastly, I would say that don't give up, right? This is just being an entrepreneur or just starting out on your own is a painful journey. You have ups and downs, and it's important not to give up when things are low, and to continue to persevere.
Yeah. And one thing that has helped me a lot is, connecting with people like you, getting that
Yeah.
positive energy from them. Because if you try to do things alone, it's not that easy. But once you
Yeah.
have connected with someone who's gone through these pains, and then, they're able to help you, mentorship is really helpful as well. So
Yeah, no,
thank you very
I
much,
would.
Priya.
Yeah, absolutely. So I do want to offer anyone who wants to reach out to me to like get any advice from me or get any mentorship. I'm happy to help them.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Priya. It was a pleasure
Thanks,
having
Adnan.
you here, and we'll stay connected. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.